Dialing in 2025, Part 3, the nutrition. How are we going to eat to support our goals for the new year? Fat loss, muscle gain, performance, health, all the good stuff. In Part 1, we talked about muscle gain. In Part 2, we talked about fat loss, which for whatever reason violated TikTok community guidelines, but that's neither here nor there. And then in this one, we're going to delve more specifically into how to eat to support either of those scenarios. Now, a lot of people make the mistake of starting with total calories and then deriving their macros based off of percentages from that total calorie amount. I don't think that this is the best way to go about doing this. I've found that it's far more efficacious in either case, whether you're trying to get the scale to go up in a good way or down in a good way, to start with your protein requirement first. In the case of a reduction in adiposity, fat loss, you're going to want to make sure you have adequate protein in order to preserve lean tissue. Obviously, we're not talking about bone here. We're talking about the good stuff. We're talking about your muscle. Then, of course, a minimum protein requirement is necessary for muscle building, as it is the primary structural component that we're going to generate this additional tissue with. Now, when it comes to gaining or losing good weight, you're going to want to calculate your protein requirements not based off of what you weigh now, but what you want to weigh. So if you're 160 pounds and you want to weigh 140, make your calculation off of that 140. If you're 160 and you want to weigh 180, then you're going to make your protein calculation based off of that 180. A good place to start with this calculation is 2.2 to 2.4 grams per kilogram, or roughly a gram per pound. Now, I want to stress that this is just a good place to start and generally works well for most people. But if you want a reference range as supported by the literature, it'll be that 1.6 to 3.2 grams per kilogram, with below 1.6 not being an adequate amount of protein and above 3.2 not really showing any significant difference in muscle growth, even in the presence of anabolics, because you can only drive that process so fast since biology is action over time. So for calories, there's a couple of ways you can do it. You can use like Mifflin St. Jeor, Harris Benedict, an online calculator, whatever the case may be, or just use a simple ballpark calculation of weight, body weight that is, times 15. And remember, this is going to be the weight that you want, not the weight that you are right now. So if you're trying to gain muscle, calculate for the higher weight. If you're trying to lose fat, calculate for the lower weight. So for instance, if you're 180 pounds and you're trying to get to 200 pounds, so you're shooting for 200 grams of protein per day, 200 times 4 is 800. So your total calories from protein are going to be 800 calories, and you're going to subtract that from your 200 times 15, or 3,000 calories, because again, 200 pounds is your goal weight, leaving you with 2,200 calories left over for carbs and fats. Okay, now next we're going to calculate fats. I generally start with a lower value of 0.5 to 1 gram per kilogram. And yes, that's kilograms, so 2.2 pounds. So this is going to be a little less than half of your protein calculation. And there's a couple of reasons for this. Number one, you don't need as much fat as you think for all the things that fat do in the body besides just be stored for extra energy. Things like cholesterol for hormone production, cell membranes, things like this. The myelin sheath on nerves, that requires a very small amount. I want to say, I heard, one of the Dr. So-and-so's, like PhD doctors, not MD doctors, but in either case, say it's something like 20 or 30 grams minimum you need to maintain those processes. Well, we're going to go a little bit higher than that. Let's say we have a guy that wants to be 220 pounds, just for easy math, right? So that's an even 100 kilos. Since he's going up to 100 kilos, I might start him at 0.5 grams. So 50 grams of fat. Now that seems like very low, but hear me out. We can push it up to 1 gram per kilogram, but you got to remember that there's 9 calories per gram of fat. And for most of us that are eating animal protein sources, even if you get really lean meats like chicken or turkey or whatever, that 0.5 to 1 gram per kilogram of fat is just going to fall out of that naturally. So really what you're looking at is eating protein and carbs, not adding any additional fat. And you're going to hit that fat amount if you do the calculation with any accuracy. So you'd subtract that value from your total. So let's go back and let's do this calculation with a 220 pound, 100 kilogram dude. So in this example, our boy's trying to grow to 220 pounds. That's 100 kilos. So right off the bat, we're going to give him 220 grams of protein times 4, that's 880 calories. His total calorie amount, so 220 times 15, gives us 3,300 calories, 3,300 calories. We subtract 880 from that, and that gives us 2,420 calories. Now next, we're going to calculate for his fats. He's 100 kilos. We'll give him the 1 gram per kilo value. That's 900, because it's going to be 100 grams, because he's 100 kilos. It's 9 calories per gram of fat. So it's another 900 calories subtracted from 2420. That gives us 1,520 calories left over. And then that value divided by 4 gives us our permissible amount of carbohydrates. I say permissible because we don't have to have that many, but that's as many as we can have following this model. To be specific, 1,520 divided by 4, because there's 4 calories per gram of carbohydrate, is 380 grams of carbs. So that's a lot of carbs that our boy that's trying to grow to 220 gets to eat. And that's a good thing because carbohydrates are extremely permissive of an anabolic environment. And if your goal is a reduction in adiposity and you're not necessarily trying to gain muscle, but just retain what you have while you're on a cut, the math is similar. You just calculate for those lower values. Now, a couple of other things before we close this out. No diet plan will work if it's not amenable to the psychology of the dieter. So we have to take a couple of things into account, okay? Meal frequency is one of those things. Now, there's no magic number of meals that's better or worse, but generally speaking, something between 2 and 5 meals works for most people. Some people like doing the fast and OMAD thing, 1 meal a day. Some people like 6 or 7 meals. So now the issue with OMAD is that, for a lot of people, especially larger people, it can be kind of a daunting task getting your entire day's worth of protein in that one meal, even with a combination of liquid and solid food sources. And then with high meal frequency, if you're staying within some form of total caloric restriction, which you probably should, even when you're bulking, unless you're just going completely off the rails, doing like a Westside, J.M. Blakely, Dave Tate, olive oil on pizza type diet, even at 4,000 or 5,000 calories each meal with 6, 7, 8 meals per day might not really hit the spot as far as satiety is concerned, especially if you're a larger individual. So like the other 2 videos in this series, this is just a general overview of how I'd approach nutrition going into the new year, with a specific focus on either muscle building and or reduction in adiposity. Content on nutrition for overall health and longevity, as well as nutrition for sports performance, coming soon. In the meantime, like, subscribe, leave a comment down below. Discord link in the description if you want to contact me directly. I got some big projects planned for the upcoming year, so be on the lookout for that. Consistency is a superpower. Stay in the fight.